Warm greetings to the viewers of this end-term review. My name is Kabir, and I'm currently pursuing an IDDD in quantum science. I'd like to start by thanking the department for letting me pursue an internship in quantum computing. The topic of my internship is NISQ algorithms for industrial applications. I'll start by talking about what is quantum computing and why quantum computing. This way, I'll introduce my internship. After that, I'll talk about a very important idea of variational algorithms, which is central to my internship. I'll then give a brief literature review of the field, followed by introducing and telling you about the problems that I solved during my internship. I'll then talk about certain experiments that I performed on quantum computers. These quantum computers are available via cloud on Amazon Web Services. In addition to that, if in case you're aware of certain ideas regarding quantum computing and variational algorithms, you may want to skip directly to the literature review. Moving on. So what is quantum computing and why quantum computing? In classical computers, you have bits. These bits can remain in state 0 or state 1 at any given point in time. In quantum computers, you have quantum bits, which are somewhat in a superposition of state 0 and 1 at any given point in time. These qubits remain in this state until you make a measurement on them. And once you make a measurement, they either freeze to 0 or freeze to 1 with a certain probability. Now, this probability depends on the state that you had earlier. For example, let's say you had a state alpha 0 plus beta 1 right before measurement. And now you make a measurement on this quantum bit. What happens is you get 0 or 1, 0 with the probability of mod alpha square and 1 with the probability of mod beta square. So this is the working of a single qubit. Now you can make a quantum computer with multiple qubits, and in addition to superposition, there's something called entanglement. So you can entangle a set of qubits, and they behave in strange ways. Firstly, entangle means once you entangle these qubits, you cannot describe the state of an individual qubit using mathematically. You have to describe the state of the system as a whole. And turns out that there's some sort of correlation between the properties of these quantum bits, these entangled quantum bits, that cannot be explained by the laws of classical physics. In addition to that, there's something else that I want you to notice. In classical bits, for example, as you add the number of bits, your computational spaces get added. In quantum mechanics, what happens is, as you increase the number of qubits, so let's say you go from 2 qubits to 3 qubits. 2 qubits, you're in a superposition of 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So this is equivalent to 4 coefficients. Now, once you go to 3 qubits, you have a superposition of 0, 0, 0, so until 1, 1, 1, 8 states. So going from 2 qubits to 3 qubits, you increase from 4 to 8. And so this is an exponential growth of 2 that is coming with the number of qubits. And after a point, what happens is classical computers cannot simulate quantum systems. And after a certain point, quantum systems cannot be simulated, and thus we need to shift to quantum computers after a certain point. Now, it turns out using these properties of quantum mechanics, you can control quantum bits to program algorithms, to code out algorithms on these quantum computers. But there's an issue with that. The thing is, you're trying to control quantum states, and these quantum states are microscopic in nature, and you are trying to isolate them and control them. So naturally, there's some noise in the system, and these quantum systems, since they are very tiny, are sensitive to the tiniest of noises. So once they interact with the environment, the information that you're trying to process, there's some loss in that. And this is the issue of decoherence, where your system interacts with the environment and loses some information. So currently, all these quantum computers that we have are noisy. And in addition to that, there's something called intermediate scale, meaning they're around 50 to 100 qubits. And so this regime of quantum computing that we have currently is called the noisy intermediate scale quantum regime. And so the point is, what can you do with these noisy quantum bits? Thing is, you cannot exactly perform quantum computations as you will, but you can do some things, as it turns out. So you can make something called variational algorithms, which are somewhat robust to noise. And so variational quantum algorithms, good thing about them is, first of all, they're robust to noise. Second of all, it turns out you can solve certain optimization problems using these variational quantum algorithms. And now optimization problems are ever present in industry. And so turns out you can use variational quantum algorithms to encode certain industry problems, optimization problems, and solve them. And my internship is all about using variational algorithms to implement solutions to problems in industry. So you cannot, since you do not have a big enough quantum computer, and even that quantum computer is noisy, you cannot solve these problems to scale, industry scale. And so you might ask, what's the point of quantum computers then? But the thing is, like, there are still guarantees in research that after a certain point, if your quantum computers have certain number of qubits and certain threshold noise levels, you can get quantum advantage with these quantum algorithms, meaning they can simulate tasks, they can perform tasks that your classical computer cannot. And that's why we study variational quantum algorithms and try to implement problems on them. So what are variational quantum algorithms? Before I get into the idea of variational quantum algorithms, I'd like to introduce you to the idea of quantum gates. So what are quantum gates? So quantum gates are nothing but some operations you can do on a qubit or a set of qubits, which changes the coefficients of the superposition of the states. For example, here you have an alpha 0 plus beta 1 state, and let's say you apply a gate called the quantum NOT gate. A quantum NOT gate would just flip 0 to 1 and 1 to 0, and you would get alpha 1 plus beta 0. Similarly, there's another gate called the rotation gate, meaning you can rotate this vector, which denotes this state, into another point. You can rotate this vector about certain axis and through a certain angle, and it will come to this certain point. And at this certain point, will have a different superposition of alphas and betas. Ultimately, these are just matrix multiplications, matrix transformations in alphas and betas, which change the superposition of the states between zeros and ones. So this is the idea of a quantum gate, and now you can build quantum circuits using these quantum gates. And so this is the starting point of any variational quantum algorithm. You start with a parameterized circuit ansatz. So this is basically a circuit architecture, meaning there are certain gates that are acting on a specific set of wires. And so this architecture is taken as an ansatz for your problem, meaning that you can have different ansatz for different types of problems that work. And there are some suggested ansatz for certain set of problems, and so on. So now the important point is that this circuit is parameterized, meaning it has gates like rotation gates and so on, which have parameters theta 1, theta 2, and so on stored in them. Let's say for simplicity, you have 2 qubits quantum state, and you start with the initial 2-qubit state, and you have a 2-qubit system, and you start with the ground state of both the qubits. Now you run it through a parameterized quantum circuit. Parameters, you initialize some parameters, and you run it through a quantum circuit. And at the end, you will have some superposition of 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. As I said, it will be a superposition of all 4 of them. And once you make a measurement, like this is the measurement symbol in quantum circuits. Once you make a measurement, it either freezes to 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1, one of the 4 with certain probabilities. Now, these probabilities you can calculate based on the state you had beforehand. But usually what you do is you take an ensemble of measurements. You would start with initial state and run the circuit again and again. And you will get a distribution of 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, the probability distribution. And with this, after you get the probability distribution after running it a certain number of times, called the number of shots, you can calculate the expectation value of something called the cost function. This cost function defines the nature and encodes the solution of your problem in some sense. This is like the loss function in machine learning, if you want to make an analogy to machine learning. And so with the probability distribution of the bit strings 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, you can calculate the average value of the cost function. And so the idea is, as you guessed it, you have to minimize this cost function to solve your problem. And so you run a training procedure which tweaks your parameters after every step, such that after a certain iteration, after a certain number of iterations, you get the minimum value of the cost function or optimized parameters. So this keeps going on. And now this training procedure can be gradient descent based or otherwise, but the point is that ultimately you'll come to a minimum cost value with optimized parameters. And once you run the circuit again with these optimized parameters, you will get a probability distribution between 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, and 1, 1. And now this new probability distribution which you get with the optimal parameters sort of encodes the solution to your problem. We'll see how that happens in a while. So one of the main variational quantum algorithms used very widely is called the quantum approximate optimization algorithm. This is an optimization algorithm to say that it does not give you the optimal solution for arbitrary size of the problem, but it gives you a near optimal solution with certain guarantees. I will not get into the algorithm itself, but it's worth noting that you have a layered structure here, with each layer having 2 parameters, gamma and beta. So let's say you have 3 layers, so you'll have 3 gammas and 3 betas and 6 parameters. And this is something to note, but besides that, we do not need to know the inner workings of QAOA to proceed. I started with an initial review of the subject with my when I got into my internship, because I had no idea about these algorithms. First of all, I attended some conference talks where they spoke about the practical nature of quantum computing and its use in businesses. And I reviewed some papers to note and learn various relevant quantum algorithms like these I mentioned here. After that, I explored certain quantum computing libraries like PennyLane by Xanadu, Qiskit by IBM, and Cirq by Google. These are just software development kits for quantum circuits. And so I finally boiled down to PennyLane as something that I'll be using throughout my internship, because it's because of certain reasons, mainly because it's used for quantum machine learning in general. So it's meant for quantum machine learning. So these variational quantum algorithms are very closely, I mean, they come under quantum machine learning umbrella. As you can see, because in neural networks, you basically have weights to train. Here you have parameters to train. And these parameterized circuit can be thought of as your neural network architecture. And you have the loss function and you have to optimize the parameters. There you have to optimize the weights. So the analogy is very close. So I also participated in some hackathons, which gave me experience with running these algorithms and optimizing them. Followed by that, I did a literature review of the field. This literature review was meant to bifurcate industry into certain sectors and pick out the papers or review the papers in these industries where quantum algorithms have been used for industry problems. So as you can see, I distributed the industry into four main sectors: mobility, industry 4.0, pharma, healthcare, and finance. And I noted some of the main papers in each industry where quantum algorithms have been used to solve problems, not to scale, but at least proof of concept problems. And I will not go through each of them, but one thing to note here is that all of these papers, at least most of them, are fairly recent. They are 2018 and after. So this is a very new field where you're trying to use quantum algorithms to implement industry use case problems on actual real world data. So after the literature review, we shortlisted 3 papers which had problems, industrial problems in them, which could be solved using quantum algorithms. The first problem has to do with the smart charging of electrical vehicles. We consider N charging jobs of N electrical vehicles with durations T1 to Tn, meaning different cars presumably take different times to charge, to be scheduled on a set of K charging points. An integer weight Wj is associated to each job, measuring its importance. For example, like ambulances and so on will require fast charging and a more priority. The time at which the load J ends, called the completion time, is noted as Cj, and we want to minimize the weighted total time, Wj Cj. So this problem is to minimize the total weighted completion time. And first step on this to solve this problem is to map it to the max k-cut problem. So the max k-cut problem is as follows. You take a graph, let's say n node graph, and you want to divide it into k subsets. So now you will divide it into k subsets. So let's say you take this figure, for example. This is doing the max 2-cut problem, where you're dividing this 5-node graph into 2 subsets, the black subsets and the white subsets. Now, the goal of the max cut problem is to optimize the cut, meaning you're cutting through these edges and you want to optimize the sum of all the weights that these edges contain. And so the max k cut problem is to find k minus 1 cuts such that the sum of all the weights through which the cuts cut through, the weights add up, and you want to optimize this weight value. So for example, in our problem, let's say you have 5 nodes or 5 cars, and you want to distribute them into 2 charging points. So each car has a weight which is associated with some other car. And so this way you get a complete graph. So this weight is a combination of the time duration along with the importance weight, which I won't really formulate exactly what the weight is, but there is some weight attached to each car in relation to another car. And so the point is that you want to find a cut in this graph that it divides into 2 subsets such that the weight of your cut is maximized. This can be solved by a QAOA problem, by a QAOA algorithms, I'm sorry. And I'd like to straight away show you some results that I got. So we simulated this problem using real world data set in the sense that the paper itself had data sets that we used. The data set contained the duration of the time the cars took, along with the start date, end date, and the weighted importance as well. So the results for simulators for max 2-cut, we solved the max 2-cut first, were as follows. For n is equal to 3 graph, we started with a simple graph with which you can see the solution by inspection itself. So let's say you have 3 cars, you want to schedule them into 2 charging points since it's max 2-cut. So you want to find the maximum cut, right? So this way you can see directly that the maximum cut is this cut exactly, this here, because the sum of the weights 20,000 and 14,000 is the highest you can get by any cut. And so by inspection, you can see that this is a solution that car 0 should go to a charging point, car 2 should go to the same charging point, and car 1 to the other one. So even the quantum computer actually simulates the right results. As you can see, ultimately you get the probabilities of the states, right? And so the maximum probability state is basically your answer. So here the maximum probability state is 0, 1, 0 and 1, 0, 1. 0, 1, 0 and 1, 0, 1 basically mean that this the middle car, which is a car with node 1, is going to a different charging point as compared to 0 and 2. And so that's why you can see both of these states have equal probability as well, because they're symmetric. I mean, they have the same meaning. The solution means the same thing. And so this is for the p is equal to 1 case. As you can see, again, you have 8 states, 0, 0, 0 to 1, 1, 1. And this 1, 0, 1 and 0, 1, 0 give the highest probability, which is your optimal answer. In this case, it's the actual final answer, but for a higher number, for a higher problem size, you will get an optimal solution, a near optimum solution. You're guaranteed a near optimal solution with certain approximation ratio, but not exactly the optimal solution at every iteration, every implementation. So as you increase the number of layers, you can see that the right solution, the correct solution, is accentuated, and the wrong solution probability is decreasing. As I said, this keeps happening as you increase p to infinity. This will basically dominate, and you'll have almost everything else zero. And you can see this is holding up in this simulation. For n is equal to 7, a slightly larger case, p is equal to 4. This is the near optimal solution that the graph gives us, that the algorithm gives us. As you can see here, 4 peaks. Since you have 2 peaks for the same solution, you have 2 different solutions in some sense. So the QAOA is suggesting there are 2 near optimal solutions for this problem, and one of them is this. Moving on, I'll show you the results of max 4-cut. Here, earlier the case was for each car, you only assign a single qubit to encode it. Here, for example, you have to max 4-cut, so you have to assign each car to either 0, 0, 0, 1 charging station, 1, 0 charging station, or 1, 1 charging station, if you do a binary encoding procedure. So each car requires 2 qubits to encode its charging station value. So for 5-node problem, max 4-cut problem, where you have 5 cars and you have to distribute them to 4 charging points optimally, you require 10 qubits. So this problem is slightly more demanding. And so for p is equal to 1 case, you can see you get a lot of peaks, and these correspond to different solution. But the optimal solution picked up by the algorithm is this right here. As you can see, this kind of makes sense because you have 5 nodes, so 5 cars, and distributing them to 4 charging points optimally. And so 2 of them will go to the same charging point, and they just happen to be the ones with the minimum weight in between them. This makes sense intuitively. And this is the bit string graph, as you can see, and it's very crowded because you have 10 quantum bits, and so that would correspond to 1024 bit strings. Now, as you can see, for n is equal to 6, p is equal to 1, to p is equal to 3, you can see that the number of spikes have reduced. That's again a confirmation of the fact that as you increase the number of layers, only the optimal solutions remain high, and rest of them fall off in probability. This is again a verification of that fact. Moving on, so the main problem in a lot of these variational quantum algorithms is the optimization procedure. Sometimes it can take a lot of time to optimize for the right parameters. But due to symmetries in the circuit of QAOA, one can find predictable trends in the parameters. So here, as you can see, for p is equal to 4, let's say, you have a linear relation between the layers, between the parameters. And that holds with all p values. Here you have 4 parameters of gamma for p is equal to 4. And so all of them are related in this linear sort of fashion. Same with the beta parameters for p is equal to any of the p's, p1, 2, 3, and so on. You have a linear relation between the parameters for any number of p. By this you can initialize your initial parameters not randomly, but with some guess. So if you have an idea of the initial parameter for p is equal to 4, you can optimize, or you can guess the value for the second parameter using this linear interpolation. And this helps in our optimization quite a lot. Another heuristic that I discovered from one of the papers was to you build an RNN for the same task. It is inspired by this paper called Learning to Learn with Quantum Neural Networks via Classical Neural Networks. So here what you do is you train an RNN on a random set of graphs, in this case 6-node graphs with 30 random graphs with 6 nodes. And I trained them. I trained the RNN to solve the max 4-cut problem. And turns out, if you feed a new graph into this RNN, this trained RNN, it's able to optimize in very less iterations. Normally, the number of iterations it takes to optimize for QAOA is almost equal to a few hundred sometimes. And so, as you can see here, in 5 iterations itself, it has almost reached the optimum value. The first iteration itself, it has gone down by a lot, and the rest of them are sort of leveling out. And so major optimization task is done in a single shot itself. And this is something impressive that we found out in our internship, during my internship. So that was the first problem on smart charging of electrical vehicles. We also saw some techniques along the way which made our optimization routines really better. Moving on, we go to the second problem of wireless scheduling. I'll give you an idea of the problem, but not describe it in too much detail. So imagine you're watching a video and receiving information from certain nodes through a wireless network. Now, it turns out the places where you're receiving this information from, these nodes also can interfere among themselves, at least some of them. And so you want to avoid that. So at any given point, let's say you have 10 nodes, you want to select a subset of nodes that do not interfere
and maximum number of nodes such that this case is satisfied. And so that would correspond to you receiving information from maximum number of nodes such that none of them interfere. This problem can be converted to a graph. For example, here, as you can see, you can make a graph something like this, where each node is the place you're receiving your information from. And a node has two nodes have an edge between them only when they're interfering. So so this can be converted into a maximum independent set problem, the problem that I just spoke about, in the sense that you want to find the independent set, which means that you want to find a subset of these nodes such that the subset that you get have no edges in between them. The nodes do not have any edges between them. And you want to find the maximum size of the subset. And so this corresponds to the maximum independent set problem, where you're trying to find the maximum independent set. And this in general can be a weighted maximum independent set problem, where sometimes you're giving a certain weight to the place where to certain nodes where you're receiving the information from, because they might have some important categorizations and so on. And so here, as you can see in this 8-node graph, this middle 4-node graph is actually the maximum independent set you can find. Rest of them also are independent sets, like this one and so on, but the maximum independent set is this. So this problem can again be solved can be embedded into QAOA and can be solved using QAOA. I will not get into the details and directly show you the results. For n is equal to 4, we start with a small problem size where you can directly see the results. So for n is equal to 4, as you can see, we get these are the red ones which are scheduled. And so you can see this actually corresponds to the independent set of this graph. And so our algorithm actually gives us the optimal solution in this case. As you can see, 0, 0, 1, 1. 0, 0, 1, 1 would correspond to this. For n is equal to 7, p is equal to 3, let's say you have 3 layers of the QAOA ansatz along with 7 size problem. You can see again, you got an independent set here. As you increase the problem size, again, it's worth mentioning that you will not always get the optimal solution, but you'll get a near optimal solution which is very close to the optimal solution with certain guarantees. I will not get into details of that, but I hope you see the essence of the solution in this case, where you get the maximum independent set. And you can see here that the solution amplitude is actually really high. So we're getting the right solution with a lot of amplitude, with a high probability. So n is equal to 10, again, you can see there is some solution suggested by the QAOA algorithm. As you can see, it's at least an independent set problem. It might not be the optimal one, because as you increase n, these are just approximation algorithms. So you might not get the optimal solution, but at least these solutions make sense and are close to the optimal solution. So that was it with the second problem. Moving on, we go to explore quantum classifiers, something called quantum classifiers in our problem 3. So the idea of quantum classifiers is again very closely related to variational quantum algorithms. Basically, you have a data set, and now any data set is classical in nature. And so you run it through some pre-processing that you would usually do in your machine learning algorithm. And after that, you run it through a feature map. Now, this feature map is basically an operation which encodes your data into a quantum state. There are many ways to run this feature map, and I will not get into the details of how do you do so, but basically it's turning your classical data into quantum data in some sense. After that, you run the resultant quantum data through a variational circuit, and this ansatz also can vary according to the problem you're trying to solve. In general, it's parameterized. And after that, you make a measurement, and you you evaluate the cost function from your measurement. Now, this cost function, again, like your machine learning algorithm, could be mean squared error or cross entropy loss and so on, depending on what problem you're trying to solve. You can run a gradient descent based, or otherwise you can run a normal optimization algorithm where you update these parameters theta and finally tend to a minimum of the cost function. And so this gives you an optimal classifier in some sense. So we tried this out. We built this in PennyLane, and we tried this out using the heart disease UCI Kaggle data set. It's a typical classification data set where you have to classify whether a person has a heart disease or not based on certain parameters like blood pressure and so on. So this is a relatively small data set as we were trying to solve a proof of concept problem, and with 14 features. PennyLane, the library which I used to build these quantum circuits, offers a lot of options for feature maps and so on. And so it was relatively easy to build this circuit. So maximum text accuracy that I attained was 70%. I tried different combinations. Heuristically, nobody knows on which data what embeddings and so on would work. And so I tried all of them, and 70% was the maximum I could get test accuracy that I got. The standard test accuracy on Kaggle is actually 85 to 88%. So in some sense, this was not the most encouraging result, but it was worth a try. Following this, there's another type of classifier that you can build, or more appropriately, a quantum enhanced kernel classifier. You are aware of kernel methods in classical machine learning. A kernel is nothing but a distance measure between two data points, and using that distance measure, you can classify data points. So for example, if you have if you have this case here where you have 4 data points and you want to somehow separate them into 2 classes. So one way would be to just send it to a higher dimension, embed it in a higher dimension, and you can easily classify. Another trick is to use a kernel which can sufficiently separate the data and you can classify it. So it turns out that feature maps on quantum computers, feature maps for these feature maps that I showed you, which encoded the data, naturally give rise to kernels. So let's say you take a quantum state and you run some feature map on it, like you map the quantum state. It's, in other words, it's just a subroutine that you run of circuits of certain gates. And once you run this quantum state and run it through this feature map, you get a resultant state. Now this resultant state can naturally give rise to a kernel. And so using this, you can create, as quantum states live in very high dimensions, as you scale the number of qubits, you can create very complicated kernels. And you can get a plausible quantum advantage with classically interactable kernels. So the goal of quantum enhanced kernel classifiers is to find kernels that are not classically simulatable, meaning your classical computers cannot simulate these kernels, and this way you demonstrate that quantum computers are superior to classical computers in some sense. For our heart disease dataset, we use something called amplitude embedding feature map, and which heuristically gave the best results, and we got around 88% testing accuracy. So what you do is, once you get the kernel, you use a typical SVM classifier or any machine learning classifier to kernel method classifier, classical machine learning classifier, to classify the 2 data points. But initially, the quantum computer is just used to generate the kernel value. It's just used to calculate the kernel. And so the thing here is, quantum computers can calculate more and more complicated kernels. And that's an open research problem, to find kernels that quantum computers can generate, which classical computers cannot simulate. And so this is something we tried as a proof of concept again, and we achieved 88% testing accuracy. So ultimately, I'd like to talk about some experiments that I did on these quantum computers with the algorithms that I just showed you. I tried it out on the max 2 cut, max 4 cut, I'm not shown here, and the maximum weighted independent set problem. So I've tried it out on 2 quantum computers, Rigetti's quantum computer, which is a superconducting platform, and IonQ's quantum computer, which is an ion trap platform. Both of these are competing platforms in the sense that they have some advantages and disadvantages, as you will see. So on max 2 cut, I'll start with Rigetti, and so I'd like to mention some bottlenecks that for example, Rigetti device is only available for these number of hours, and it takes around 60 to 120 minutes to run an n is equal to 3 max 2 cut problem, which actually runs in like 10 seconds or so in a normal simulator. This is because people are sending in jobs from throughout the world, and so there's a lot of queue. It takes a long time to run these circuits on quantum computers. Once it gets to the quantum computer, it's fairly fast. So n is equal to 3 max 2 cut using 5,000 shots, meaning each time the cost was calculated, the measurement was done 5,000 times to get a probability distribution. As you can see, the highest probability is a state of 101, which actually corresponds to this graph. And this is, in fact, the right answer for n is equal to 3 max 2 cut. As you can see, there's not a lot of margin through which Rigetti has gotten the right answer, but nonetheless, it is given the right answer. Moving on, for n is equal to 4, p is equal to 1, it miserably fails. Max 2 cut problem again. You have to classify these 4 and find a cut such that you can get them into 2 subsets with a maximum cut. And this, as you can see, Rigetti classifies all the 4 problems into one machine, one charging point, which is absolutely wrong. So it cannot handle a problem size of 4 because of decoherence issues and so on. For wireless scheduling, which was weighted maximum independent set problem, for n is equal to 4, as you can see, Rigetti is able to give a maximum independent set answer. And so ultimately, Rigetti does work on n is equal to 4 WMIS problem with a good margin, as you can see. N is equal to 5, it again fails by, actually it gives you an outlandishly wrong answer. This also has to do with the topology of the quantum computer. As you can see here, this is the topology of Aspen-9, a quantum computer by Rigetti. So as you can see, let's say you have 32 qubits in this case, 31 qubits. If you want to implement a gate, let's say you want to implement a gate between, entanglement gate between first qubit and the 31st qubit. As you can see, they are very far away. And so in case you have to do that, you have to swap the 16.1 qubit and 16.17. You have to perform these swap operations, which takes up a lot of time and adds to the noise in your system. And so this is actually a very bad topology in some cases, in most of the cases actually, but in some problems, it does embed really well. For IonQ, moving on to IonQ, the good thing about IonQ is that it is all-to-all connected, meaning as you can see, it's a circular topology and circular shape, and the qubits are in a circular shape, and all of them are connected to all of them. That means if you want to perform a gate between arbitrary two qubits, two qubit quantum gate, you can easily do it. You don't have to do any extra operations and so on. So this is a good thing about IonQ. The bad thing is it takes a lot of time to run algorithms on IonQ. It takes about a day if you're lucky to solve an n is equal to 3 max 2 cut. This is taking into account the queue time on Amazon Web Services and so on. But still, the time it takes to implement gates is much higher than Rigetti's superconducting platform. But on the other hand, it gives you an optimal solution only in 1,000 shots versus Rigetti's 5,000 shots to give you a clear winner. And it definitely gives you the correct answer. If Rigetti's does it, more or less always IonQ will do it. So it has impressive control and accuracy and low gate error rate due to higher coherence time, meaning it can hold its information for a higher amount of time, and it has the advantage of topology as well. But again to mention that it takes a lot of time to run algorithms on IonQ, and so we could only run this particular n is equal to 3 max 2 cut on IonQ. We could not do more experiments. We tried, but it did not. The time was not enough. So this is the end. This is when I'd like to end my presentation. I hope you appreciated the utility of quantum computers, the plausible utility of quantum computers in industry in the coming years. I'd like to mention a quote by John Preskill here, which he's a leader in the field of quantum computing and theoretical physics for that matter. He said that NISQ is not likely to change the world all by itself. Instead, the primary goal for near-term quantum platforms should be to pave the way for bigger payoffs, which will be realized by more advanced quantum devices down the road. And this is something, and this is in the spirit, in this spirit is what we have worked throughout the past 6 months in our internship, where we aim to design and test out robust algorithms on various industry use case problems. Nobody knows where you might find quantum advantage, what data set might give you that quantum advantage. It's again a lot heuristic, like the case of machine learning. And there's no well-developed theory for at least variational quantum algorithms. And so we have recognized problems, applied and optimized quantum algorithms to suit these industry use case problems. And finally, experimenting with them gave us a lot of insight as to what is the level of quantum computers today and what needs to be done in the future. At the end, I'd like to thank my department and my mentors at Bosch, along with my co-interns who helped me with useful discussions. In addition, I'd also like to thank Professor Anil Prabhakar, who helped me procure this internship in the first place. These are the references that I used for my presentation, and also a lot of them used in my internship. Please have a look at them in case you're interested. Thank you.